Hi, this is Yvonne Galusha, and I'm here to make a little video to help you with the Excel to Access assignment. At this point, we are looking at the raw data that's a one worksheet page Excel file, and what you need to do before you get to this point is figure out the ERD for this. Now, I've already talked about that in a different lecture, and you can see the posted lecture on this that has the ERD for this data set. So my focus here is to go over the mechanics. To begin with, you have to get a clean Excel file, assuming we already have the ERD, which means these headers become field names. We don't want spaces. So you can see here I'm making a single row have the headers, not two rows, with no spaces in those headers. Major's okay, credit's okay, date's okay. Enrollment, we want to call enrollment date. Once that's done, we can get rid of these rows. That's another thing you want to do, is make sure that you have one block of data. No spaces. So I'm scrolling down looking to see if we have any other issues, and here you can see we have the subheading for subtotal, and we have some spaces, and I'm just going to get rid of those because we don't need calculated fields in our raw data. You can generate those later through your queries. So here again we have another one. So typically at the bottom I'll delete multiple rows because there could be garbage on all the boundaries. So there at the bottom, as well as you can see, we have some comments along this column, so let's delete a few columns. Now the other thing you have to do is you have to look for errors, and the way you do that isn't always easy if you're just eyeballing it, but the sort of thing that I will do is I will sort and then look down to see if I have a problem. So you can kind of see these don't have extraneous spaces. You can use the trim command, and that will help get rid of extra spaces, but this is also a quick check that sometimes will help. So I'm not noticing anything on the column B. These are different courses, so they are different names right next to each other, but I'm not going to take too much time in this to show you what I mean, but it's worth it sometimes to sit and sort your data, let's say by last name this time. And then you're going to have multiple rows for students because this spreadsheet is organized by an enrollment event. So you can kind of glance down here and see if you notice any problems, because whenever you have an Excel spreadsheet, it's fairly common to get some typo issues that are going on in this sort of data. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for here. And I'm just quickly glancing. Oh, do you see this? Something jumped out at me right there. What that will do later on, I'm just going to highlight this. If you were to go on and proceed and not fix this, you're going to end up with two different students with the same student ID, and then when you go to try to set your primary key field using the student ID, it won't let you because it's going to say it's not a unique value. So what you need to do here is get that little spelling fixed. So I'm just kind of demonstrating this to show you some of the key fields you want to do this with. Take time when you're working in real data. I'm going to sort now by major because I noticed when I was doing this in one of the classes this week that we also had a problem with history. And I can tell you what that caused, but let's fix the problem first. Maybe you can see this, but right here the I was left out. Now what that will cause, in the major table you're going to have HISTORY as a major and HSTORY as a major. And that's a little bit of a problem. You could think, well, I'll just delete that later. But what also you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with a double entry in the student table. And that can cause problems as well, because when you do the join, you're going to end up with the student here listed taking that major and the student here. You see that? Segal Jonathan is there and Segal Jonathan is here. So you end up with a student with the same ID, but the two different majors, and then this leads to a problem later. So we have to get this fixed. Alright, so we think we have a clean data file. Obviously I didn't check them all, but I think those are the errors I found in this data set. So I'm going to save this where I'm going to work, and to make this fairly simple, I'm just going to put it on the desktop. Now I'm ready to create an Access database. We'll just start with a blank one. Here's where you keep track of what you call it and where you put it. Again, I'm putting it on the database, or excuse me, on the desktop, and I am simply calling it, not desktop, school database. Go ahead and create. Now I do not need this table, so I got rid of that. I'm ready to import my clean Excel file. So I went to External Data, Excel. I browsed to where I put the file on the desktop. Since I know the name, I will just start typing it. I'm going to import it to the current database. And I just have data on one sheet, so I'm okay there. I want to use the first row as column headings, eventually fields, so make sure that's checked. I'm not going to worry about setting up data types here because we'll do that later. This is a temporary raw data file, so I don't need a primary key. I want to call it my raw data and finish. I don't need to save those. So what you're going to do now with this raw data is you're going to use a make table query to create the entities. So I'm coming into the Create tab, Query Design, and I'm adding my raw data table. And you should have already decided what entities you're using, or creating, excuse me, and what attributes go where. You remember you have to start with the parents, and then do those first, and then the children. So with this one, I'm going to do the major table first. I double click on major, and if I view it, remember you toggle between datasheet view and design view. I've got a problem of redundancy. See here, business is listed several times, etc. So the way you get rid of that is you need a group by clause in the SQL, and you click totals, and that adds the group by. Now if I do a datasheet view, it looks good. I got rid of my two histories, so we're good there. Come back to design view. Now you click the make table. You type the name of the table this is going to be, which I'll call it TBL majors, designating that it is a table. That did not create it. You have to click Run to actually create it. Yes. Now, we look at this table in Table Design Datasheet View. It looks fine, but we need to introduce a primary key, because text is not a good thing to use for a primary key like that. Could be a typo was made when someone's entering it later. So I'm going to insert a row and add a new field called Major ID, and just designate that as an auto number. I do not want to say primary key yet. That's the last step. So now I am saving this. We're ready to proceed with the next parent table, which is courses. So the course ID is going to be the primary key, so I want to put that first in my list of attributes, then the course description, and then credit. Credit is determined by the course. Those are the three. We look at it in datasheet. That looks all right. Come back to design view, do a make table, and this one we're going to call table courses. So we run it, and we have that parent entity done. Now we are ready to create the children entities. In our ERD, that's going to be students and enrollments. Now, with students, you have to have a join field between majors, and we do not have that primary key major ID here. So what we have to do is we have to go to Show Table and bring the majors tables into this query view. And what we want then in the students, the student number is going to be the primary key, so we'll list it first. Then their name, last and first. Then we want to link to their major. So we would put major ID here. Now if I look at this in datasheet view, lo and behold I have 915 instances or records. That's clearly not correct. You should never end up with more than the number in your raw data, which is 357. So what's wrong? I come back to design view, I have group by. Well, the problem is you don't have a join. This is a temporary join. You obviously can't use the major ID because that doesn't exist in this table, but you can use major. The main thing to remember is you have to go from parent to child. So we drag here where it's listed once, and there are many occurrences under the student or in our raw data. So now let's view it. Much better. 61 entries. We come back to design view. We click make table. This is going to now be the students table. Okay. And run. Very good. And we have our students table. We have one more entity to create, and this one is going to be enrollments. Enrollments is a child from two sides, two parents. It is an intersection entity or a link table entity, or sometimes referred to as associative entity. So it's a parent would be the courses and students. It resolves that many-to-many relationship. Clearly, what's relevant here is a course is taken by a student, and we have an enrollment date, and then also the grade from that enrollment. Those are the relevant attributes. Obviously, you have to have joins. We talked about that. So we have the course ID, drag from parent to child. We have the student number, drag from parent to child. Let's check it. 357. Whenever you're doing this, you typically have one entity that has the exact same number of rows as the raw data, which this happens to be the enrollment. And if you think about it, it makes sense because the data sheet, Excel worksheet was kept based on enrollments. It could be more than one, but at least one. So now let's click Make Table again. This is going to be our enrollments table. Let's make it. And we don't need to save this query. We're done. The next step is you have to go to each of these and designate all the detail in Table Design View. I am not going to go through all the description and validation, but I am going to set the primary keys so that that is done, so I can set the relationships between these entities.